My name is Lauren Hayes, and I'm 33 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your life begins to split in two is that it almost never announces itself as a disaster. There's no thunder, no warning, no moment where the world pauses long enough for you to understand that everything you thought was solid has already started to collapse. Sometimes it starts with silence. My husband, Ethan Hayes, used to talk about her all the time, not in a way that raised alarms. Not at first. It was always casual. Melissa said this, Melissa thinks that. Melissa's on the same project, just background noise. The kind of thing you don't question when you've been married for 8 years and you think you know the person sleeping next to you better than you know yourself. She was just a coworker, just a name, just part of his day, until one day, she wasn't. He stopped saying her name completely. And that was the moment I should have paid attention, but I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid.
Insecure.
One of those women who see threats in every woman their husband works with. I didn't want to be her, so instead, I became someone worse. I became the woman who ignored the truth while it was still small enough to face. We had a good life. That's the part that still confuses people when I tell this story. We weren't struggling. We weren't fighting. We weren't broken. At least, not in any way you could point to and say, there, that's where it started. We had a house in the suburbs. No kids yet, but we talked about it all the time. Next year, he'd say, when things settle down. He was a financial analyst. I was a graphic designer, working from home. Our lives were easy,
Predictable. Comfortable.
and maybe that was the problem. Because comfort doesn't make noise when it starts turning into distance. It just stretches
Quietly.
until one day you realize you've been standing on opposite sides of the same room for months. The late nights started around March. Big project, Ethan would say, loosening his tie as he walked through the door at 9, sometimes 10. Sometimes later. End of quarter pressure. I believed him. Of course I did. I'd have dinner waiting. He'd eat in silence, scroll through his phone between bites. Sometimes he wouldn't even look at me. Then he'd shower, climb into bed, turn his back to me, and fall asleep like I wasn't even there. Our sex life didn't disappear all at once. It faded.
Quietly.
Like something you don't notice is gone until you try to reach for it and realize there's nothing there. By April, it was gone completely. The first time I tried to initiate, he smiled. Tired, distracted. Babe, I'm exhausted. Work's been brutal. The second time, he kissed my forehead instead. Give me a few weeks, okay? A few weeks turned into months. And somewhere in between, I stopped asking. I started noticing other things, small things, the kind of things you can explain away if you try hard enough. His phone was always face down, always on silent. He started taking calls outside, on the back patio, in the garage, anywhere that wasn't near me. If I walked into the room while he was on his laptop, he'd close it too quickly. Confidential client stuff, he'd say. Nothing interesting. I nodded. Pretended I believed him, because believing him was easier than asking the question I wasn't ready to hear the answer to. My friends didn't help. At brunch one Sunday, I mentioned the late nights, the distance, the feeling that something wasn't right. They laughed, not cruelly, just casually. Lauren, that's marriage, Sarah said, sipping her mimosa. The spark fades. It's normal. Jessica nodded. Men get stressed. They withdraw. Don't make it about you. So I didn't. I made it about me instead. What was I doing wrong? Was I not attractive enough anymore? I'd gained maybe 10 pounds since the wedding. Was that it? Was I too comfortable? Too available? Too much? I started working out more. Bought new lingerie. Cooked his favorite meals like I was trying to win back something I didn't even understand I'd lost. Nothing changed. By June, I was tired. Not angry. Not suspicious, just tired. That deep kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to fix something no one else is admitting is broken. That's when he told me about the trip. Work conference, he said. Chicago, 3 days, mandatory. I nodded. Of course it was. Everything important in his life seemed to be happening somewhere I wasn't invited. Will Melissa be there? I asked. I don't know why I asked. The name just slipped out. Maybe some part of me hadn't let it go. Maybe some part of me had been waiting for a reaction. And I got one. He hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Who? The word landed wrong. Too fast, too blank, like he'd practiced not remembering. Melissa, I said slowly. Your coworker. You used to talk about her all the time. Oh, right. Yeah, probably. Probably, like she was nothing, like she had never been anything. Why? He added. No reason, I said, just asking. But something inside me shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough, just a crack. He left on a Thursday morning, kissed me goodbye at the door, told me he loved me. I said it back.
Automatically.
Like muscle memory, I watched him drive away and felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just this strange, hollow emptiness, like something had already ended, and I was the last one to realize it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that moment, the hesitation, the way he'd said, who? Like he'd erased her, or worse, like he'd trained himself to. At 2 a.m., I got out of bed, walked downstairs, and opened his laptop. He'd left it at home. Probably didn't think he'd need it. Probably didn't think I'd ever touch it. The password was still our anniversary. He'd never changed it. That should have meant something. It didn't. Not anymore. My hands were shaking as I opened his email. I told myself I wouldn't find anything, that this was all in my head, that I was about to feel ridiculous and guilty and relieved all at once. I clicked the first message, and everything fell apart. The first thing I saw wasn't even a message. It was a confirmation email. Plain. Ordinary. Almost boring in how harmless it looked. Hilton, Chicago. Check-in, Thursday. Check-out, Sunday. Room type, standard king. King. Not 2 beds. Not something you could explain away with limited availability or company booking policies. 1 bed for a work conference. My fingers went cold against a trackpad. I just stared at it, waiting for my brain to catch up, waiting for some rational explanation to step in and fix what I was seeing. There had to be one. There always is, right? I kept scrolling because some part of me, some stubborn, desperate part, still believed I hadn't reached the worst of it yet, that I could stop. Close the laptop. Go back upstairs. Pretend I never opened it. But I didn't stop because deep down, I already knew. The next email was from the same hotel. Different name, different reservation. Same dates. Melissa Cart, room 1249. Right next door. I felt something in my chest drop. Not shatter. Not explode. Just drop. Like an elevator cable snapping in slow motion. I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long. Minutes, maybe longer. Staring at 2 bookings that said more than any confession ever could. 2 rooms, side by side. Close enough to look innocent. Close enough to pretend. But not separate enough to be real. This doesn't mean anything, I whispered to myself, out loud. Like saying it might make it true. Companies book employees on the same floor all the time. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe, but even as I said it, my voice sounded thin, like it didn't believe itself, because I hadn't opened the worst part yet. The messages. He'd synced his phone to the laptop months ago, forgotten about it, or assumed I'd never look. The conversation thread was right there, pinned near the top. 6 months long, thousands of messages. And I opened it. The first thing I noticed was how normal it looked. Good morning. Did you sleep okay? Don't forget your 10 Little things. Everyday things. The kind of things people send when they're part of each other's lives. Not coworkers. Not colleagues. Something else. Something deeper. I kept scrolling. Faster now. My breathing getting shallow. My heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I saw my name. She's been so needy lately. April. He'd written it so casually, like it was a fact, like it was obvious. Always asking where I am, what I'm doing, It's exhausting.
Exhausting.
That word hit harder than anything else. Not guilt, not conflict, just inconvenience. Melissa replied almost immediately. Maybe you should just tell her. Tell me. Tell me what? That the man I'd built 8 years of my life around was already gone? Not yet, he wrote. I need to figure things out first. Make sure this is real. It's real, she replied. I love you. I stopped breathing. I think my body just forgot how. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. But I kept reading because I couldn't stop. Not anymore. I love you too. 3 words. Simple. Clean.
Final.
I didn't remember standing up. I didn't remember walking. The next thing I knew, I was in the bathroom, on my knees, throwing up. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't graceful. It was violent, raw. Everything in my body, rejecting something my mind couldn't process fast enough. I gripped the edge of the toilet, shaking so hard my arms barely held me up. When there was nothing left, I just stayed there, curled on the cold tile, breathing like I'd just run miles I didn't remember starting. He loved her. Not once, not impulsively, not by accident. Over and over again, in messages that stretched back half a year. They talked about a future, plans, timelines,
Logistics.
like I was a problem they needed to solve. Once I figure out the house, once I sort out the finances, once the timing is right, once, always later, always when it was convenient. They weren't caught in something messy. They were building something deliberate, careful,
Patient.
and I wasn't part of it. The Chicago trip? It wasn't work. I checked his company website. There was no conference, no event, nothing. He hadn't just lied. He had created an entire reality and expected me to live inside it without ever questioning it. I went back to the laptop because at that point, what else was there to lose? There were photos, not many, but enough. A dinner, a blurred selfie in what looked like a car, a hotel mirror shot, her hand on his chest.
Possessive. Familiar.
He looked different. Lighter, like the version of him I hadn't seen in months. I stared at that picture for a long time, trying to remember the last time he'd looked at me like that. I couldn't. That's when something inside me shifted. Not broken, not destroyed. Something colder.
Sharper. Clarity.
This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't something we could work through. This was a choice.
Repeated.
Every day, for 6 months, I wiped my face, slowly stood up, walked back into the living room, sat down. And I made a decision. Not to confront him, not to call, not to scream. I needed to see it with my own eyes, because there was still a part of me, small, stubborn, irrational, that wanted to believe there was something I was missing. Some context, some explanation. Some version of this that didn't end with everything I knew collapsing. So I opened a new browser tab, booked a room, same hotel, different floor, different name. Check-in, Friday, one night. My hands were steady now, strangely calm, like my body had already burned through all the panic it had to offer. I wasn't going there to fix anything. I wasn't going there to fight. I was going there to end it. Friday morning, I called in sick, packed a small bag, drove to the airport. The entire time, I felt disconnected, like I was watching someone else live my life. Someone colder, braver, more reckless. I boarded the plane, sat by the window, watched the ground disappear beneath me, and for the first time since I opened that laptop, I didn't cry, because something inside me already knew that whatever happened next, there was no going back. I landed in Chicago just after noon. The city looked exactly like it always does in photos. Tall, polished, indifferent, like it had seen 1,000 stories like mine, and didn't care how this one ended. The Uber ride to the hotel felt longer than it should have. Every red light stretched. Every turn felt deliberate, like the universe was giving me chances to change my mind, to tell the driver to turn around, to go back to the airport, to go home and pretend none of this existed. I didn't. When we pulled up to the Hilton Chicago, my hands started shaking again. Not violently, just enough to remind me that I was still human, still someone who felt things. I checked in. The woman at the front desk smiled the way people do when they assume your life is normal. Business or pleasure? Neither, I almost said. Instead, I just nodded politely and took the key. My room was on the 8th floor. His was on the 12th. I dropped my bag near the door and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. The room was quiet, too quiet, like it was waiting for something to happen. "What are you doing?" I whispered to myself. The question felt real now.
Heavy.
I could still leave, book the next flight home, pretend I never saw anything. Let him come back. Let him lie. Let him leave on his own terms. But then I remembered the messages, the plans, the way they talked about me like I was already gone. No, I stayed. By 6 o'clock, I was downstairs, sitting in the lobby, a book open in my lap that I wasn't reading, positioned just close enough to the elevators to see who came and went. Time moved strangely, too slow, too fast. I don't remember most of it, just fragments, the sound of heels on marble, the low hum of conversations, the occasional burst of laughter that felt too loud in a world that had suddenly gone quiet for me. At 7:15, the elevator doors opened, and there they were. Ethan stepped out first, wearing the blue shirt I bought him for his birthday, the one I'd wrapped myself, the one he'd hugged me in and said, "You always know exactly what I like." Behind him, Melissa, a black dress, heels,
Effortless.
like she belonged there, like she belonged with him. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand brushing his arm, his hand resting at the small of her back.
Casual. Familiar. Intimate.
Like they'd done this 100 times. And the worst part? He looked happy. Not the tired, distant version of him I'd been living with for months. Not the man who came home and barely spoke. This version was lighter,
Warmer.
alive. I felt something twist in my chest. Not jealousy, not even anger.
Recognition.
This was who he chose to be. Just not with me. They didn't see me, too wrapped up in each other, too comfortable in a version of reality where I didn't exist. They started walking toward the exit. Probably dinner, probably another evening in the life they'd built behind my back. My legs moved before I told them to. One step, then another.
Closer.
I could hear her voice now, soft.
Playful.
I could hear his laugh. And then he leaned down and kissed her. Not quick, not careless. A real kiss. The kind he used to give me. Everything inside me went still. Not shattered. Not broken. Just still. That's when he saw me. His face changed instantly. Color draining. Eyes widening. Like someone had pulled him out of a dream he wasn't ready to wake up from. Melissa pulled back slightly.
Confused.
Followed his gaze. Saw me. For a second, no one moved. "Hi," I said. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. Like it didn't belong to me anymore. "I'm his wife." The words landed heavier than I expected. Like something final. Something irreversible. People started noticing. Heads turning. Conversations quieting. "Lauren." Ethan's voice shook. "What are you doing here?" I tilted my head slightly. "What am I doing here?" I let out a soft laugh. It didn't sound like humor. "That's funny," I said. "I was about to ask you the same thing. I thought you were at a work conference." Melissa took a small step back,
Instinctively.
like she suddenly realized she was standing in the wrong place. "I should go," she murmured. "No," I said, without looking at her. "Stay." My eyes stayed on him. "I think we should all talk about this." "Not here," he said quickly, lowering his voice. "Let's go upstairs. We'll talk in private." "Private?" I repeated. I felt something sharp rise in my chest. Not panic. Not grief. Truth. You weren't very private, I said, my voice steady, when you were texting her about how needy I am. His face crumpled. When you were planning your future together. Melissa's expression changed from confusion to understanding. When you were telling her you loved her. Silence. Heavy. Thick. You went through my phone? He snapped suddenly. I blinked, then laughed. A real laugh this time.
Sharp. Disbelieving.
You've been sleeping with your coworker for 6 months. I took a step closer. And you're upset that I went through your phone? A security guard started approaching. People were openly watching now. Ma'am, the guard said carefully, is everything okay? I didn't take my eyes off Ethan. No problem, I said calmly. Just a husband who lied about a work trip so he could spend the weekend with his mistress. A ripple of murmurs moved through the lobby. The guard looked uncomfortable, glanced at Ethan. Sir? Ethan didn't respond. He just stood there, frozen. Like his entire world had collapsed in the span of 30 seconds. I slipped my wedding ring off slowly, felt the weight of it in my palm. 8 years, reduced to something that fit between my fingers. I held it out toward him. Here, I said softly, you can give this to her. He didn't move, didn't reach for it, so I let it fall. It hit the marble floor with a soft, hollow sound, bounced once, rolled slightly, came to rest near his shoe. And that was it. No screaming, no tears, no scene bigger than the truth already was. I turned, walked toward the elevators. Behind me, I heard him say my name. Quiet. Broken. I didn't stop, didn't turn around, because some things don't deserve a second look. That night, back in my room, I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in my lap, and for the first time in months, everything made sense. The distance, the silence, the emptiness. It wasn't something I'd imagined. It wasn't something I'd caused. It was real. And now, so was the end. I picked up my phone, searched for a lawyer, and by midnight, I had already started the process of ending my marriage. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Because whatever we had already been over long before Chicago. I just happened to be the last one to see it. But not anymore. I filed for divorce on Monday. Not after a long conversation. Not after hearing his side. Not after giving him the chance to rewrite what had already been written. I did it from the hotel room, Friday night, still sitting on that same bed, still wearing the same clothes I'd confronted him in. There's a moment, after something breaks, where everything becomes very clear, not easier, not softer, just clearer. I called a lawyer, spoke calmly, gave facts, dates, evidence. No emotion, like I was discussing someone else's life. By Sunday night, the paperwork was ready. By Monday afternoon, he was served. At work, in front of the same people he'd been lying to for months. I made sure of that. He called me 37 times that day. I counted. Not because I cared, because I needed something to do with the shaking in my hands. Voicemails, texts, emails, different tones, same script. Please. We need to talk. I can explain. It's not what you think. I made a mistake. I love you. That one almost made me laugh. Almost. I blocked his number. All of them. He showed up at the house Tuesday night, pounding on the door like he could force his way back into a life he'd already left. But I had changed the locks. That was the first thing I did when I got home, before unpacking, before sleeping, before allowing myself to feel anything. Lauren, open the door! His voice cracked.
Familiar.
And completely foreign at the same time. I stood on the other side, listening. Not moving. The neighbors called the police. I didn't have to. When they arrived, I handed them the restraining order my lawyer had filed that morning.
Prepared.
Signed.
Effective immediately.
They escorted him off the property. He didn't fight them, didn't argue, just looked at the door like he was waiting for it to open. It didn't. He tried to contest the divorce. Of course he did.
Counseling. Mediation.
Let's work through this. His lawyer reached out to mine.
Polite. Professional. Optimistic.
I told her to tell him no. There was nothing to work through. You don't accidentally build a second relationship. You don't accidentally lie every day for 6 months. You don't accidentally fall in love with someone else while sleeping next to your wife. Those aren't mistakes. They're decisions.
Repeated. Consistent. Deliberate.
And now I was making mine. The evidence made it easy. I had everything. The messages, the hotel bookings, the receipts, dinners, gifts. A weekend trip to Napa I had never heard about. His lawyer advised him to settle.
Quickly. Quietly.
We were legally separated within 2 months, divorced in 6. He bought out my half of the house, liquidated his 401k to do it. I took half of everything, not out of spite, not out of revenge, because it was mine. 8 years of my life, 8 years of loyalty, of showing up, of believing in something he had already abandoned. That had value. Melissa didn't stay long. 3 weeks after Chicago, she left him. I heard about it through mutual friends. Apparently, being the other woman was exciting. Being the actual woman, less so. There were complications. Of course there were. She had someone else, too. A boyfriend. He found out the same way I did. Messages.
Careless.
Forgotten. He left her. She tried to go back to him first.
Cried. Begged.
Promised it meant nothing. He took her back for a while. Then left anyway. Said he couldn't look at her without seeing what she'd done. I understood that more than I wanted to. Eventually, she tried to reach out to Ethan again, looking for something.
Comfort.
Validation. Proof that any of it had been worth it. He blocked her. Funny how that works. He didn't block me. Not at first. For months, he tried. New numbers. New emails. Showing up in places he knew I'd be. The gym. My favorite coffee shop. Always the same words. I'm sorry. I was an idiot. I threw away the best thing in my life. Can we just talk? Number. We couldn't. So, I changed my gym, changed my coffee shop, made my social media private, built a life that had no space for him in it. My friends were divided. Half of them showed up, really showed up. Wine nights, long talks, letting me cry without trying to fix it. The other half didn't understand. People make mistakes, Jessica said one Sunday at brunch. Maybe you should hear him out. I looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, he didn't make a mistake. He made a choice. Every day. For 6 months. She didn't bring it up again. But she stopped calling, stopped inviting me to things. I found out later her husband had cheated on her 2 years ago. She had forgiven him. My divorce made her uncomfortable. It's easier to believe something is fixable when you need it to be. I stopped going to brunch. The hardest part wasn't the divorce. It was the after, the silence. The house felt too big. The bed felt wrong, too empty. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes, reach across the mattress out of habit, and then remember. Some nights I cried. Other nights, I just stared at the ceiling, wondering how I'd gotten there. I didn't date for a year. Couldn't imagine trusting someone again. Couldn't imagine letting anyone get close enough to do that kind of damage. Every time a man showed interest, all I could see was a hotel lobby, a kiss that wasn't meant for me. My therapist said it would get easier, that time would help. I didn't believe her, but slowly it did. The pain dulled, the anger softened, and I started remembering things differently. Not the version of my marriage I had protected in my head, but the real one. The distance, the quiet, the way I felt alone even when he was sitting right next to me. Chicago didn't destroy my marriage. It exposed it. A year later, I saw him again.
Grocery store. Produce section.
He looked older, tired, like life had caught up to him in ways it hadn't before. He saw me, froze. I saw him see me. For a second, we were both standing in the same moment we used to live in. Then I picked up my apples and walked past him. He didn't say my name, didn't try to stop me, just watched me go. I heard he got engaged last year. Not to Melissa. Someone new. I saw it on Facebook before I remembered I'd unfollowed him. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Not even satisfaction. Just nothing. That's how I knew I was finally free. I'm 33 now, single. No kids. Living in a one-bedroom apartment downtown that is entirely mine. I dated someone for a few months last year. It didn't work out, but it didn't break me either. I'm learning. Slowly.
Carefully.
How to trust again. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone to Chicago. If I had ignored the signs, let him leave on his own terms. Maybe it would have hurt less. But then, I remember his face. That moment in the lobby. The shock, the fear, the loss of control. And I'm glad I went, because he didn't get to rewrite the ending. I did. I don't hate him. I don't think about him most days. And when I do, it's not with anger. It's something closer to pity. He traded something real for something exciting. And when the excitement faded, there was nothing left. I didn't lose a husband that night in Chicago. I lost a man who was pretending to be one. There's a difference. Now, I'm building something new. Not with someone else. With myself. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough. If you're reading this, and something inside you is telling you that something isn't right, listen to it. You're not crazy. The distance is real. The silence means something. And you deserve more than someone who makes you question your own reality. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait for the moment that forces you to see what you already feel. And when the truth shows up, don't make excuses for it. Because the truth doesn't break you. It frees you. It just breaks the lie you were living. And that is the only thing worth breaking.